I constantly see how many people are identifying as non-binary and queer and all these other genders when they are not same-sex attracted or experiencing gender dysphoria. Most of them are just dressed.
How do you fucking know? How do you know that? How do you know any of that? That is so weird to presume that. Like, that is fucking strange. Like, what would you say if someone's like, I don't think you're actually a lesbian. I don't think you're attracted to women. I think you do it for tokenization. Wouldn't you be like, well, that's fucked? I don't do a lot of Arielle Scarcella. I haven't really explored a lot of Arielle Scarcella's catalog yet. So this is going to be something new for everybody. I figured this one might be something I could speak a little bit about. Anti-racist is the code for anti-white, featuring gothics. Might be an interesting topic. If you're unfamiliar with Arielle, she's made waves in the political sphere for being a member of the LGBTQ community, and yet speaking out in quite transphobic terms, typically transmedicalist terms, biological essentialism, that kind of stuff, while being very, very adopted by the right, because of course they love tokenization. So there's that as well. So this will be fun.
The trouble with saying it's okay to be white, of course, there's a article on this.
White nationalism or neo-Nazism isn't the same as saying it's okay to be white.
Everyone knows these days that it is not enough to simply be not racist. You have to actively be anti-racist. I didn't know what the that meant, so I had to look it up. Also, you might notice that there's no ads on this video because YouTube demonetized me yet again because they hate me. So if you want to go and support me and see other content that has never been posted on this YouTube channel or
I'm okay.
Smithsonian, by the way. So for those of you who don't know, it is a reliable source. I think it's a not-for-profit, government-owned series of museums and such across the country. They are the ones that wrote this article or posted this article. Being anti-racist. To create an equal society, we must commit to making unbiased choices and being anti-racist in all aspects of our lives. Okay, they still didn't say what it was, but let's see if they say here. Race does not biologically exist. So how can you be racist? Okay, I'm sure they're going to tell us. I'm sure they're going to tell us. Yet how we identify with race is so powerful.
It's like the next line. Got him.
It influences our experiences, shapes our lives. In a society that privileges white people and whiteness, racist ideas are considered normal throughout media, culture, social systems, and institutions. Historically, racist views justified the unfair treatment of oppression of people of color. Yes, absolutely, in the past. I also looked this up on a number of different sites.
In the past. It's over now. It's over. Thanks, Obama. We solved racism. That's good.
Being anti-racist is fighting against racism. Racism takes several forms of works, most often in tandem with at least one other form to reinforce racist ideas, behaviors, and policies. Types of racism are, we about to be educated. Okay, ready? Individual racism refers to the beliefs, attitudes, and actions of individuals that support or perpetuate racism. The U.S. cultural narrative about racism typically focuses on individual racism and fails to recognize systemic racism. Okay, so individual racism basically is like what most people think of when they hear the term racist. Like anyone can be racist. That's what most of us think, right? Interpersonal racism. Oh God, there's like 10 different types of racism. Maybe we can check all the boxes and be all the different types of racism. Interpersonal racism occurs between individuals.
It's almost like, you know, as a society, it's a little more complicated than just saying that there's racism and racism exists. It might be a little more pernicious in the forms it takes, and there might be entire fields of study dedicated towards this, but you know.
These are public expressions of racism, often involving slurs, biases, hateful words, or actions. Okay, I guess we could say that someone who is an individual racist might express themselves in a nasty way, and that's what interpersonal racism is. Interpersonal racism is kind of like a verb. Institutional racism. These are discriminatory treatments, unfair policies, or biased practices based on race.
I really wish these kind of videos, rather than be like, you know, their attempts at debunking, would actually be learning experiences, because it would be wonderful if, like, all of a sudden she learned about things like institutional racism, and then all of a sudden it's like, I had never thought of it that way, you know. And then oftentimes I do things in my everyday life and I don't even recognize my own privilege or perhaps what exists in a world outside my bubble, but it's wonderful to learn these kind of things.
race that result in inequitable outcomes for whites over people of color, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the first two types of racism can be attributed to a person of any race, but the third type of racism can only affect people of color, right? Like, am I understanding that right so far? Just to make sure I'm following along. Structural racism is the overarching system of racial bias across institutions in society. These systems give privileges to white people, resulting in disadvantages to people of color. Example, stereotypes of people as criminals in mainstream movies and media. Okay, so if people of color are being portrayed as bad guys in movies, and that's considered structural racism, does that mean it's structural homophobia when we see the constant, like, gay boy best friend in every movie? Like, and he's super feminine and everything?
More so, it would be the gay villain archetype. Yeah, that actually does contribute towards that. Yes, that would be structural homophobia. But you are correct. You're correct. You're choosing a much softer example, one that is a little less, loaded, shall we say. Or the idea of the serial killer being a trans woman, for example, is also a very repeated negative stereotype that reinforces that into structural racism, and then that can affect institutional racism as well. You might look at, for example, the hiring rates between individuals who have white names and individuals who have black sounding names. So a lot of the negative stereotypes that will be associated with black people, whether they're conscious or unconsciously aware of it, they are going to have that as a biases when they're choosing whether or not to interview or give a second interview to individuals based solely on whether or not the name sounds white or black to them.
All jokes aside, though, this has come from a government-funded website, and it's made its way into the educational system. It's getting a lot of praise and a lot of pushback.
I recently found an article written by a teacher who expressed the importance of critiquing the anti-racism ideology. He goes on to explain that while he originally supported Black Lives Matter, he's since become skeptical and no longer supports the movement. Anti-racism ideology is built on a specific premise. Racial disparities are the result of a white supremacist society. He goes on to write that his discomfort stemmed from observing the insidious authoritarian pressure in many education systems to make sure they are not deemed racist. In some of the workshops he's attended, the ideas ranged from creating more diversity committees to paying employees of color more money for the invisible work that they do. And by the way, I'm just quoting what he wrote. He goes on to state that the new trendy definition of racism, prejudice plus power, aggressively calls for revolutionary dismantling of institutional structures. What this new wave of anti-racism is teaching people is that if you're not actively fighting racism, you're condoning it. He makes a great point when he says that this is causing students to not speak out against ideas they disagree with in fear of being labeled a racist. The same goes for people who speak out against the new gender laws, like myself, being labeled transphobic, which is interesting to me because inflating labels for the sake of shutting down someone who disagrees with you is inevitably going to...
How are you conflating these two things together? There's such a huge chasm between, like, I have a question, I'd like to ask it, and I'm going to probably ask it in a respectful manner, versus I disagree with what I see before me, and I'm going to condemn it, and I'm going to directly vilify or marginalize people. There's a huge gap between those two things, and the former is not making people afraid to speak their minds or ask questions by any means.
To create more division and hate. Who wouldn't develop some type of resentment towards another human being after being accused of something so insidious?
Okay, this is a huge idea because all ideas should be critiqued and questioned, right? Nobody is above that. We've gotten to a point in society where if it is a black person or a trans person or a black trans disabled queer non-binary has one foot, we can't critique these people anymore.
But you see what you just did there? You see that? The fact that you wanted to make a little cheeky joke out of it? That is part of the problem. Someone's not going to take you seriously. They're not going to think that you're in good faith wanting to engage in this conversation and learn. It just seems like you're trying to score points with your crowd and hopefully increase the amount of money that you get in donations. That's what that appears to be like. So there's a huge difference, and you're trying to call out people, like you're trying to conflate the two and make people all of a sudden be like, oh, they're right. This is cancel culture. People can't even ask questions anymore. They're not even allowed to ask simple questions. Can I not ask questions and then also vilify and make fun of trans people in the process of asking that question? What is this, cancel culture? Am I not allowed to throw in a few jokes? Can I not pepper in my question? Make it a little more interesting? Or you're not? Come on, the attention spans these days. I got to compete with a lot of things, all right? There's Fortnite. I mean, there's 3D porn. There's virtual porn. I mean, people can connect with USB ports and weird ass shit now. And then there's all these buttons and tabs and stuff. I don't even know how to work it anymore. It's baffling to me.
Anybody who is considered oppressed, we have to believe their narrative. Another quote from this awesome article. Well-intentioned educators lack understanding in this ideology's origins. Anti-racism ideology is stemming from a kind of revised postmodernist philosophy, and from that, critical race theory. Postmodernists argue that there's no such thing as objective truth. Truth is merely a narrative held by the groups who hold the power in society. While postmodernism is a great literary lens in which to discuss different historical narratives, I am hoping that educators can see that
I don't think right-wingers should be allowed to use the word postmodernism anymore for anything. I think they have to like, I'm gonna actually 1984 that one out of their vocabulary, okay? There's a real 1984 moment for you. I'm removing your ability to use it because it's lost all meaning. You've destroyed it. I'm looking at you, Jordan Peterson, mostly Jordan Peterson.
this also brings with it
Postmodern neo-Marxists, every one of you.
dangerous consequences, and this is the most important sentence here. By objecting to truth, we are now going to deny the scientific method. My favorite part of this article is when he talks about how, everybody in his teaching staff is so proud of being anti-racist, yet they make these new rules for young black men and women who are constantly late to class because, the stereotype is that black people can't be on time. How to
Like right there, you get what you're doing, right? You're contributing to those negative stereotypes, and that's why people don't take you seriously when you're trying to have a conversation about this. If you're going to be like, well, but black people be late all the time, you know how it is, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But seriously, the cancel culture. Why can't we talk about this? Why can't I talk about racial issues? Like, I don't understand. Like, no one takes me seriously. The left has lost its mind collectively.
How did we get here? I would say the same for the hashtag it's okay to be straight. I constantly see how many people are identifying as non-binary and queer and all these other genders when they are not same-sex attracted or experiencing gender dysphoria. Most of them are just dressed.
How do you fucking know? How do you know that? How do you know any of that? That is so weird to presume that. Like, that is fucking strange. Like, what would you say if someone's like, I don't think you're actually a lesbian. I don't think you're attracted to women. I think you do it for tokenization. Wouldn't you be like, well, that's fucked? Well, like, who are you to say that about me? How would you ever know that? It's on no one. It's on absolutely no one to validate that for somebody.
Dressing differently, want to express themselves differently, or in between the idea of masculine and feminine. In the grand scheme, is it okay to be straight? Yeah, obviously. Is it okay to be white? Yeah, obviously. Hello. These are all things that we cannot control and do not make us better or less of a person. But let's see what the far left has to say about this, shall we? The trouble with saying it's okay to be white, of course, there's a fucking article on this. Okay, so a bunch of posters apparently were printed out and put on university campuses. He said the posters were a protest of racial discriminatory ideology taught at the university. He said many professors explicitly teach in their courses that it is not okay to be white. It's okay to be white appears to be a literal or denotive message, but when we read it in context against the backdrop of institutional Eurocentrism and current anti-racist political movements like Black Lives Matter, we can see that it is far from benign.
This is probably why there's been an uprise in things like hashtag it's okay to be white. Or can we just simply admit that it's freedom of speech and also freedom of interpretation? If you choose to interpret a simple statement such as all lives matter as a jab at black people, that's on you. But I don't think it's healthy to automatically assume simple statements are malintentioned unless you want to constantly view yourself.
Unless they were invented by a group that is trying to vilify another group, and they've been co-opted by a group that's trying to vilify another group, and they're widely known to be associated with that. Yes, absolutely it is. You're not like, you can't stand there and say like, why is the term Hail Hitler? Why does it have negative connotations to it when some people are using it simply to refer to something that they enjoy, which is the name of an orange juice product, which happens to have the same name as Adolf Hitler. It's just an orange juice. It has nothing to do with the former. So I don't understand. How are people misinterpreting this? How is it correlated with this?
This should go without saying, but white nationalism or neo-Nazism isn't the same as saying it's okay to be white. Furthermore, I can't change the fact that I was born with this skin color, so it doesn't make me special in that regard. That said, if you find your skin color special enough to celebrate it, that's fine. You do you. But remember to keep that same energy, meaning if you're proud of your blackness, other people should be allowed to celebrate their color as well, including white people.
If we compare it to
So just gonna give a quick refresher and educational lesson here, because I think this part's important. It is absolutely okay to be white. It's okay to be a white person. The reason that this is an issue, and the reason why that some people might write articles on this or so have you, is that the idea of races, the idea that there's white people and black people, turns out the whole thing's a lie. There's no such thing as races. Like, it's arbitrary. It's something human beings made. It's something white people actually invented in order to subjugate other races, in order to justify the slave trade, the North Atlantic slave trade. I mean, it's really hard to basically involve yourself in, chattel slavery and all the horrifying things that involves if you don't have some kind of justification that, well, we're not actually doing it to fellow humans, we're doing it to lesser thans, we're doing it to people below us. So we have to invent races. And what's something that separates the two of us really easy that I don't have to think about happens to be melanin, the amount of melanin that's in your skin. So that's what they went with. So in that sense, the races were effectively invented, but there's nothing that really differentiates us as humans. So that's one of the most beautiful things about all this, that we're all just one race. We're all the human race. The unfortunate part is that we as a society have also stratified and classified human beings based on their races. And we do a lot of things, such as you were learning about them earlier, structural racism, systemic racism, things like that. So that's why the idea of saying, like, all of a sudden, why do people hate on white? Why do they hate on white people? Well, we're trying to get you to acknowledge that A, these things don't exist, that they were invented, and B, that there already is a hierarchy that society is judging people upon. So let's get rid of both. Let's get rid of both of them. And at the same time, when you want to say, hey, what about white pride? Why can't I be proud about being white? You can be really proud about being who you are. If you want to say like Irish pride, if you want to say Scottish pride, British pride, that's all totally normal, fine. It's fantastic. If you're going there and saying white power, well, it's probably going to be negatively associated. Might be associated with some pretty icky things that have happened in the past. So that's where it becomes problematic. Now you see the difference. There's a very, very clear, distinct line going here.
To people saying that I'm proud to be gay, I don't think that's actually comparable. Obviously, we are saying we are proud to be gay, but what we actually mean when we say that, we are proud to be ourselves and living our truth openly. We are not proud of the simple fact that we exist and did not choose this. People don't need to come out as black or white in the same way you need to come out as LGBT. Oh, at least some people.
I know everyone's like, hey, cultural pride, not national pride. Okay. All right, I'll accept a correction there. Yeah, sure. Maybe saying national pride is going to be cringy, especially if I'm appealing already to people who are kind of flirting with ethno-nationalism. The idea of like, all right, so don't get carried away, okay? Yeah, it's not like Scottish pride as in the Scots are the only people that should exist on the planet and then the superiority of the Scottish race. Okay, we've gone full circle. We've come back. You're doing the thing again. Stop doing that thing. Just how about this? Why don't we just get rid of all borders and then we'll be fine, right? Well, we'll be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Consumer culture helps build rebels. Identity is a big part of branding campaigns, diffusing politics of new social movements into commercial demands for representation, inclusion, diversity, and tolerance. Obviously, like we know that already. Consumerism also preaches an ethnic of non-conformity. Nonconformists are never satisfied with the status quo, continually seeking new ways to subvert it. Here's the best part. Therefore, to be a rebel, to transgress and subvert the perceived status quo, is the dominant popular mode of identity. And if being anything other than being white and cis and straight, people are going to figure out how to do it, because people are hating on cis, straight, white people these days. Now I think I understand how we got here. Let me know what you think.
But here's the thing. They're not hating on them in the way you think they are. You think that there's this war against like the whites. There's this war against the cis. No, what people have been doing, and this is the same thing. It's funny, we're gonna have to bring up Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, is they've been trying to get you to acknowledge the problems that are in society. They're trying to get you to acknowledge what's wrong with believing in things like race, like thinking race is a real thing. That's where the problems come from. And the fact that society stratifies us based on these things. Like this is what we're trying to get you to acknowledge. It's the same thing with like Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is not saying that black people's lives matter more than other lives. It's you should recognize that Black Lives Matter, and in society, they don't seem to, especially when it comes to the police. That's what Black Lives Matter is about. So if you meet that with, hey, all lives matter, like that's the same as someone who has a disease saying, hey, by the way, I've got a broken toe or I've got a cold. And then someone saying, hey, come on, someone else somewhere has cancer. All right. All diseases matter. All diseases. Yours can wait, all right, until you acknowledge that all diseases are equal, every single one of them, in their application and how much suffering you should be privy to. That's how the whole thing works. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because It's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our glorious gods, Xander Corvus and I'm Wrath, may you shower us with glory and smite our enemies. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we serve at your leisure, your grace. To our lords, Toefox, Bisexual Black Gamer, Jimothy K. Meeble Beeps Jr., Ryan Lubin, Trevor R., Jeffrey Lamb, Alexander Thaler, and Hans Josephine, we shall carry your banner high into the fields of battle. To our Knights of the Round Table, Timothy Hart, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophagic, Saren 42, Chronic de Hemphog, Gail Kotka, The Great Pudini, Bone Jenny, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, J. Fraser Cartwright, Thomas Barrington, Jimmy Bignuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chitoro, Goofalankius, Zach Christensen, Nicholas Marks, Yopi, Josh Mickelson, Melissa Murphy, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Constance Joyce Lacheris. We lift our glasses of ale and we salute you.